All right, everyone, we should be live. Let's make sure that's actually the case over on Rumble. Of course, we do have chat working over there. By the way, before we begin, pinned at the top on YouTube as well as in the description cross-platform. It's also at the top of chat on Rumble. Popped it in there as well. Keep in mind, my new work, How to Debate Gun Rights, is available. It's 48 pages long, so it's meant to be a pithy read and give you tips on how to support the Second Amendment against its various adversaries. Both well-meaning but ignorant people and malevolent people, because all of the arguments for gun control, anti-gunnery, break down very easily when confronted. It's just a matter of how you confront it. Framing the argument, as Jessica Burbank may actually deem it. I do see the chat is working. Ubuk says, good morning from the New York Catskills. I've been through there. Mrs. Tag, Clank all, good morning. Lemon Curd Zero, Clankathon. And Jane Austen putting a spoon emoji in there. So we'll be talking about all sorts of good shit today. Let me make sure that we're live on Rumble. I'm not talking myself. Yep, we're live. Okay, yes, Dicky Dick is the co-host. The cats are a little bit on the lazy side today, which makes sense since they spent half the night attacking one another. Many such cases. We've got to talk about the Kakhovka Dam. Of course, we've got new updates about that, various updates. It looks like it may not have been blown up at all. It looks like it may have not been sabotaged. It may have been poor maintenance. Anyway, thousands of people displaced, nuclear plant hazarded, among other things. So it is still very much in flux, the actual news with regards to that. It is a very concerning situation, but we do have updates actually to give. We'll be talking about Trump. Interesting point from the Washington Examiner, an opinion piece here, talking about some of the other candidates. Now, really, everything is framed as far as the 24 GOP primaries go in the context of Trump. If it weren't for his existence, there would be very little to talk about, actually, including some references to him without using his name, notably by Mike Pence, among others. Also, Tucker Carlson knocking it out of the park on Twitter. He has humiliated his former bosses at Fox, as well as the legacy media in general, pulling in millions and millions of views and tens of millions of engagements on a Twitter show. Then in the legacy media, their response, well, it's a low-budget effort filled with conspiracy theories. Interesting that a low-budget home effort filled with conspiracy theories is completely decimating your networks, and he's getting 10 times more attention in the same slot than any of you are. We'll get into that as well, and some other shit. And I talk about Chris Christie, his impotent attacks on Trump. It's like he's hoping that Trump doesn't get in because he's precluded from running or he dies or something, and that I guess he gets a slot on a potential DeSantis cabinet or something like that. Pathetic, and you know, needlessly pathetic. I'm not even sure. I mean, at least with Mike Pence, it's like you have a political pulse. But we'll be talking about all of that and much, much more. Don't worry, there's lots to talk about. Jesus Christ. Jolly Roger 183, where was your live stream yesterday? 6th of June, 6 p.m. No, I didn't do a live stream yesterday. I couldn't. We had a scheduled appointment we had to go to. By the time that was done, I was too de-energized. And, you know, I aim to please. I want to be high energy, not Jeb Bush energy. Treasure Troller, my clank is bigger than your clank. I'll be getting some more clanks when I get back to the United States, a couple of them. Of course, now there's a mandatory waiting period in the state of Vermont, so it'll take a few days, but can't wait to show some shit off and eat some MREs. It'll be fun. I'd eat these MREs here, but I don't have enough time to actually have like a proper meal out of them because, of course, I get easily distracted as an ADHD kid. If the child is crying or if the cats are acting up, the latter is usually more prevalent than the former, actually. Yeah, we'll be talking about UK's processed food standards and as well, among other things. I see over 1,000 people cross-platform are already watching live, so it is definitely an energetic day. Also, it's sprinkling rain outside, which I like because there's a heat wave coming. That Manx guy sent $5. No comment. Thank you very much. Yeah, smash that like button, man. Dab on them. Anyway, we'll start off with the first bit of news here before we do anything else. Satellite images show the Kakhovka Dam was already partially damaged days before it collapsed, according to reports. This is something that was speculated before, and it looks like the satellite images are real. They're being confirmed. Um, Even odds says that the Kakhovka Dam did not actually get sabotaged at all, either by Ukrainians or by Russians. People have noted that according to Ukrainian army accounts, a number of Russians were killed actually when the flooding began downriver. It wouldn't really make sense not to pull your men up the bank, maybe 10 feet or something, before you blow the dam. I'm skeptical at this point whether Russia is the party that was responsible for this. Likewise, I'm skeptical because of the amount of damage downriver to infrastructure, bridges, farms, towns, and so forth. I'm skeptical the Ukrainians deliberately did it. I'm thinking that this might have been lingering damage actually from an actual attack on it by the Russians from 2022. What I'm thinking is that because it was already an active war zone, the bridge was damaged at that point. It was shored up, but it wasn't properly, fully, rebuilt, rehabilitated at that time. And that more recently it began to collapse a few days before now, and that this latest episode is its full collapse. The dam has collapsed. The water level, by the way, downriver is beginning to recede slightly because the reservoir has been emptying out, of course. And so the good news is the water downstream is going down. The bad news is it'll take an inordinate amount of time and effort to repair it in a war zone. It's controlled, this area, by Russia mainly, but the Ukrainians are the ones presumptively that would want to repair it. Meanwhile, Crimea has water problems. That's Russian controlled. Downriver, thousands of people have been displaced. A number are dead. We're not exactly sure. And by the way, the other day I made a prediction, and this came in, by the way, I gave this prediction before the news came in of this eventuality, that one of the big problems you would see, because this is an active war zone, is that you are going to have landmines washing ashore, landmines going off in random places. That unfortunately appears to have been proven true hours after I predicted that was one of the eventualities, and it was breaking news when I reported on it. Hey, there are probably tens of thousands of landmines on both banks. It could be that this flooding water moves them around a little bit, and I'm surprised that no civilians have been hit by one of these floating landmines and gotten killed by it. And indeed, there is footage of a prospective landmine going off actually near the dam after it had already been breached. Landmines are being flooded out. They're going to end up all over the place. Downriver, they're going to end up in the ocean. They're going to end up on shores near the ocean. And that's rather sad. You have this problem, by the way, near the DMZ. There are millions of landmines in the DMZ on both sides. And sometimes you get flooding in that region. And fishermen and people near the shore have been killed, actually, in Korea on both sides, actually, by the landmines being flooded downstream. There's a reason why international convention generally is don't deploy landmines. They can be helpful, that they're used. But really, when you think about the fact that there are landmines that are 50 years old, still blowing up elephants' legs in Cambodia and things like that, is it really worth it? Probably not long term. I like, by the way, some of the legacy media reporting on the dam here, the Kakhovka Dam that was destroyed or underwhelmed by nature. It's, again, not 100% entirely clear. I like how a lot of them are talking about it's an ecological disaster. Oh, my God, think of the poor animals suffering in that region, which will now be much closer, at least temporarily, to how it was before the dam was built. It'll be a swampy morass. The reservoir will be mostly drained, and downriver the area will be wetter. It'll revert to wetlands maybe or something. Who cares? I mean, you're talking seriously about ecological damage and climate change and shit like that over a grave humanitarian threat in which thousands of people have been internally displaced within Ukraine and, parts of Crimea, actually, which is controlled by the Russians. And you're worried about, the gray-legged retard stork or the Mexican tree frog or something like that. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And then there was a bunch of oil and stuff released too from this incident. Again, though, we're not sure that this was a deliberate incident at all. Ukraine immediately blamed the Russians. Russia immediately blamed Ukraine. Some people blamed third-party saboteurs. All of those are theoretically plausible. But now the thinking is, well, a few days ago, it already had a problem going on. There was obvious damage to it. Could it be that the repairs that were done literally a year ago, didn't work fully. The hydroelectric dam wasn't up to snuff. And then you had record high water levels, and the pressure was too much for it, and it just started crumbling. I think that might be the most likely possibility at this point, as opposed to sabotage itself. Doesn't reflect well on the Ukrainian engineering corps, I suppose. Their repairs to that particular bridge. Big boy, we demand a live stream from the cuck shed. I do my shorts out there. That's enough for you. You'll get what you're given, boy. Big boy, not only landmines, but also industrial waste in the reservoir that once dried up will be dispersed by the wind. Yeah, ain't it lovely? Sparky, dam was constantly shelled by the Ukrainians for months, but I don't know if that contributed to it. Nuke plant received lots of Ukraine shelling too. Yeah, everyone's shelling everyone in that area. I mean, I'm not surprised that the hydro dam went. I'd be more surprised if infrastructure didn't eventually fail. I mean, working in a war zone, you're trying to get the job done as quickly as possible before you go back to babushka now, aren't you? Yeah, I wonder if you're doing as thorough a job as under normal circumstances you would. Branch Covidian 19. Part of me wants to see a presidential election between Chris Christie and J.B. Pritzker. We could replace the debates with eating and farting contests. I think Christie would end up winning. He's a gas bag, that's for sure. I think there's one on Rumble too. Yes, we have Sigil Stone 17. Morning, Sticks. Is it really still a landmine if it's floating in the water, or tossed about by the waves anyway? Or is it just fishing with dynamite on a random timer? Yeah, that's a good point. The problem is they wash ashore. When the water goes back down, all those landmines have been dispersed through an area that currently is inundated. The inundation goes away, and now you've got, 5,000-10,000 landmines to deal with. So people can't actually go back to their homes until you search out every square inch of that area, with the fear that a little kid will stumble upon one, think that it's a frisbee, press the little button, and die. How wonderful for the little Ukrainian and Russian children in that area downriver. How wonderful for them. Their leaders are doing such a good job of protecting them, protecting their sovereignty and their safety. Dude, I think that the people in that general area don't even care who runs them at this point. They just want to be left alone to farm their beets. Bento Whalen, pee-pee, poo-poo. Yes, indeed. Poo-poo, pee-pee. Very mature chat. Yes, indeed. Anyway, next news story. Donald Trump, the GOP field, and a return to normalcy in Iowa. Yes, the normalcy is basically nobody dares to criticize Trump too much, and they keep referring to him without actually using his name. This points out, for instance, Mike Pence, the biggest loser in this article. It's a long article. You can read it if you want. Link in the description, archived, of course. I'm not going to read through the whole thing because then that would be the entire live stream. It's a long article. And it pushes Scott off as being, he should be nominee. And it's clearly a TDS article, so it's not giving any favors to Trump. One thing they point out, though, here, and Nikki Haley also, I'll read this one verbatim. The first one's Pence. I couldn't have been more proud to have been part of the administration that appointed 3 justices that sent Roe v. Wade to the ash heap of history where it belongs, Mike Pence said. Which administration? Pence did not say. He is talking about the Trump administration, but he didn't want to draw that comparison to Trump. Haley, this is Nikki Haley, of course, you may have forgotten about her because she's forgettable, who held a big job in the Trump administration, U.S. ambassador to the UN, was similarly vague. Referring to Trump's move of the U.S. embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, she said, when we moved the embassy. She was referring to advising the president, but she never said who that president was. For his part, DeSantis did not mention the former president either, even though he's begun to answer Trump's attacks and exchanges with reporters. This is basically the Scott DeSantis kind of article, like those are the 2 mavericks that people have to gather behind. And then these other people are cowards because they won't mention their former boss. Well, they are. They should mention Donald Trump. I mean, it's all fair game. It's perfectly fine if you want to attack him. It's just that if you're going to crow about the accomplishments of that administration because it was the one you were part of, it's going to be difficult. This is why Mike Pence can't win, by the way. He can't appeal to the MAGA crowd because he's running against Trump and Trump is running. He can't appeal to the anti-MAGA crowd because any accomplishment during that tenure that he talks about is Trump adjacent. He was the VP at the time. Nikki Haley has the same problem. And keep in mind, they're near the top of the stack when it comes to electability. According to the current numbers, it's basically Trump and then DeSantis as the second wheel. And then you've got Pence and Haley rounding it out. Those are the top four. Well, if two of them basically can't talk about any issues because there's no issue to talk about in which it won't involve Trump, and Ron DeSantis' platform is basically I'm Trump minus Trump, it is literally all about Trump. Other people talk about him constantly. Look at Chris Christie. We'll be talking about him later. What was his campaign launch? Rambling about Trump and then saying, oh, by the way, I'm running. That was his campaign launch. It was worse than the DeSantis glitch launch. Certainly worse than Mike Pence's lead up to his launch, where he's posing in the biker jacket and talking about rejecting populism. Chris Christie managed to do it worse. Now he's getting into it with Rubio. Little Marco came out to attack him. By the way, I will give credit to Little Marco. Although Christie did crucify and castigate you, and that really was the death knell of your run. I made a song about this at the time for a reason. Well, Chris Christie is technically correct. He beat the shit out of Marco Rubio. Rubio is also correct here. Chris Christie's a blowhard. He's a one-trick pony, basically. And the second best well-known thing that he's well-known for is standing silently on the stage behind Donald Trump. And the third thing that he's known for is sitting on the beach like a beached whale during the government shutdown when nobody was supposed to be on the beach. That's what he's known for. What possibility does he have? We'll explore later, of course. Let's see. Garrett Thomas. Hey, from Maine. Sticks, did you hear you're the go-to source on politics for Sam Hyde, a.k.a. Samuel Hyde, a.k.a. Samantha Hyde, a.k.a. Samir Al-Hajid? Good. Well, then he's well informed. By the way, Maine polling just came in. Trump is 20 points ahead in the Maine primary as well. Well, caucus. So, caucus. I remember that joke from the Romney era. Ashley, Aqua landmines? Don't let the kids jump in puddles. Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, it's kind of funny because it's just so fucking stupid. But it's not going to be funny when people's kids step on the landmines, when some farmer gets his legs blown off, or when his cow gets blown up. I guess there's your beef for the year. King of Biltong, good morning from Antons in Roanoke, Texas. Code STICKS for free shipping. Hashtag Clank Nation. Yes, if you use code STICKS, you can get free shipping on your Biltong. I myself am going to go and requisition it in person. It's been too long since I've been in Texas. Been, a decade and a half. Texas is pretty cool. Lots and lots of guns and great tacos and burgers. Mexican-style burgers with slabs of avocado on them. You know what I'm talking about. Sparky. Russians have HAF change of both the nuke plant and dam for some time, so they could have just opened the floodgates if they wanted a flood. Yeah, it could literally have been not subversion at all. It could have literally been an industrial accident. That's wonderful. Yeah, great. Sacrificial ramen. Hey, Sticks, how do you feel about Peter Zion? He made a fair assessment stating Biden will win 24. We'll like to hear your take on it. Clank on. I'd have to watch his assessment to see what he's deriving that from. I am not so sure that Biden will be reelected. Keep in mind, he could die before then. He's in his 80s. He could be incapacitated. He could end up standing down unexpectedly at some point. We're not sure. Sparky, had charge. Correction. Yes. Spider Eternal, you missed my birthday yesterday. Clank, I'm sorry. Well, happy belated birthday then anyway, Spider Eternal. Yeah. Yesterday, by the way, also me and Liz's anniversary. So there's another reason to, take it easy. Sparky, before the beached whale thing, Christie was known for that freeway traffic debacle in New Jersey. Yeah, that's been covered up by all of the other problems that he's had, though. Also, he looks a little bit like Taft. It'd be funny if he ended up nominee, but then Trump went full Theodore Roosevelt mode and ran third party. He revives the Bull Moose Party or something. That'd be history repeating itself too ominously. Lemon, thoughts on Amber Heard? Do you think AQ2 will flop? What's AQ2? I don't know what that is. Amber Heard, well, she abused Johnny Depp. Since you combine that, I'm not sure if you're referring to Amber Heard, the person, or some user online. Nazis. So, yeah. Donald Trump is 2024. Basically, the whole election is a referendum on Trump's existence at this point. Nothing else. Apparently, the economy and everything else don't matter. Trump's the only one addressing them other than Biden. Biden has bad ideas. Trump has counter ideas, and everyone else is too busy talking about things that happened under the Trump admin or the fact that they're not Donald Trump. Well, no. I disagree with this MAGA thing. Now, don't worry, MAGA voters. I agree with your ideology. I just don't like the whole term, the whole moniker. Sacrificial Ramen, want me to send you the link to the video? Yeah, you can DM me on Twitter with that if you'd like. That'd be cool. Next news story, we have some humiliation of the legacy media. Whenever that happens, it does not matter who is humiliating them. I'm still game to talk about it. Tucker Carlson's new Twitter show, seen by millions, starts with conspiracy theories. Also, separately, they called it a low-budget effort. Well, look at him. He's handling his own teleprompter. Well, okay, that's so terrible. Why is it then that a person who has to handle their own teleprompter from their goddamn den managed to outshine every legacy media slot over the same 24-hour period several times over? We are talking about tens of millions of views of his actual broadcast. You can find that on Twitter. Just go to his page. And tens of millions more engagements, knocking it out of the park. Now, in full disclosure, I'm not a full-on Tucker Carlson fan. I've mainly criticized him throughout the years because he was working for Fox. He's working for a legacy media network. Ergo, he is controlled opposition under that banner. He went too far. He became a little bit too uncontrolled, and he gets fired, which is predictable. That's exactly what happens. You have to toe the line. You can come up against the line. You can be edgy, but you can't go over that edge. That's the problem with having like a Fox contract. Now he's on Twitter. Elon Musk doesn't give a fucking goddamn shit what he talks about. He can talk about space aliens. He can talk about 2020. He can talk about whatever. He can talk about MK Ultra, Operation Northwoods, all the good shit that people really need to know more about. I look forward to those episodes, by the way. He pulled it off. He did well. And to his credit, he did what I was hoping he would do, but was skeptical he would, which is the pivots away from the legacy media. He goes rogue. So that, in my mind, partially redeems him. We'll see what he says over the coming months in additional broadcasts. He does seem to lean towards possibly being like a DeSantis firster, which is why he's using Twitter maybe as opposed to Rumble. Rumble tied with Truth Social and Locals, actually. We're beginning to see a feud between these two sort of poles. I would advise him, though, to use Rumble and multi-stream as opposed to just being on Twitter, because you'd definitely be the number one user on there fairly quickly with numbers like those, Tucker. But I will give him credit where credit is due. And credit is due. You completely humiliated Fox. You pulled in more viewers than you did on the top-rated slot on Fox when you were on the network. Fox, meanwhile, has hemorrhaged a bunch of people, a bunch of listeners and viewers, much like CNN has. MSNBC has attained equilibrium just because the people that watch it, they're stubborn. Other than that, though, Twitter and Tucker Carlson, light years ahead of Fox News for the same slot. I mean, I believe that the number of total unique viewers might actually be more than many broadcast networks have in a 24-hour period across all of their viewing slots. That's an accomplishment, and it deserves to be mentioned, and I find it absolutely fucking hilarious. Again, it's not necessarily pro Tucker Carlson. It's more fuck Fox News. They are suffering and whining about it. Are they going to put up a hit piece against Tucker, their former best employee? The employee of the month, of the year, and the decade. They're going to throw him under the bus. Oh, I would love to see that happen and a feud ensue with that one. Apparently, they might start a lawsuit. Well, Tucker's not allowed to have a show on Twitter. He's under contract through 25 with us. Good luck getting that stick in a court, by the way, because I don't think that it precludes the ability to have a personal account on Twitter. We'll see what happens with that one, but I wouldn't put it past them to try. The Grizzly 617. What are the odds that Trump is actually jailed and convicted by the Uniparty for being the most evil criminal of all time, and it's a time to jail all those evil Trump voters? Are they that crazy? The latter part? No. The former part? I can't tell you that because we're in untested waters. Much like the indictment, we threw out almost 2.5 centuries of legal and civic precedent because Orange Man bad. I can't tell you how far they're willing to go. Honestly, I think that if he were to get into the White House, they might try a JFK-style attempt. I'm beginning to think that that might actually be on their minds. So We'll hope that doesn't happen, and keep an eye out on what transpires. Branch Covidian 19. Rumor has it J.B. Pritzker is the driving force behind the body positivity movement. Lemon, do you think Aquaman 2 will flop because of Amber? I don't know. I don't really pay attention to Marvel and DC bullshit. I'm not interested in superheroes and supervillains anyway. And Aquaman was never of interest, even in the brief period where I kind of was into that. No, I'm not into that. So, like, Superman never pulled me in. The closest thing is Joker. And that's because it didn't have a bunch of unbelievable bullshit. Oh, random technology and superpowers and stuff. It was a movie about a nut job that was driven mad by insane levels of abuse and went on a killing spree, basically. That's why I like the movie. It's more believable. By the way, good movie. Opinionated Junkie. He means Aquaman 2. Also, The Flash is coming out. Yeah, it wasn't do they still have that one dude that was arrested in Vermont for stealing liquor from a building at some point? He was grooming some teenager or something. I can't remember his name. And he was the Flash. Have they replaced him, or is he still the Flash? I don't know. I don't care. William Hooper. Hey, Sticks, good morning. You're keeping me sane while I'm attending college, also known as a federal indoctrination center. Yeah, I dropped out of college myself. Look at me. Skate Betty. Many clanks from West Virginia. These Appalachian mountains aren't just funny. They're hill areas. I get it. Zachary Antle. Hey, man, what do you think caused certain leftists to become as crazy as we now know now? I assumed it was how messed up the 2000s seemed at the time. Yeah, in the 2010s. It was sort of situational in part. Aquafan. I hope Aquaman 2 doesn't flop. I like Amber Heard, but I don't like Amber Heard, but I'm a big Aquaman fan, hence my username. Yeah, I don't know anything about it. I don't know anything about superheroes and supervillains. It's all become woke bullshit anyway, so I'll just watch Wakanda. Dennis the Menace. Will outsourcing our brain power to AI make us dumber over time? Do computers in general make us dumber? No, and they don't have to. Computers have made me smarter because I used computers and the internet to look up all sorts of crazy shit from old literature and edit it and stuff like that. It made my career. It's all how you use it. Some people use it just as a distraction. It's the same thing with how you use your time in general. If you use your time with passing folly and just playing around, derping off, of course, you're not adding anything to civilization, to society, or to yourself. You're not learning anything. You're not producing. You're not making money. You're not helping your health, etc. If you apply your time wisely with regards to anything that you're doing, then it's a good investment of time. That can be the internet technology as well, and AI is no exception. It's all about how you use your time. If you're going to use AI to make memes, well, that can be amusing, but maybe you should be looking for ways to use it if you intend to learn and to make money. Sparky, Tucker doesn't have the vast staff and crew that our fearless leader Styx has, albeit feline, so his production may not be up to snuff. Yeah, they call it a low-budget effort. It seems pretty slick to me. It's no worse than any decent streamer out there or anything like that. And a follow-up, maybe Tucker purposely gave his Twitter show the DIY look to give it an air of authenticity. That's also a good suggestion. I think that's probably likely. I mean, the dude is loaded as fuck. He's got tens of millions of dollars in net worth easily. He was making a huge... I mean, Fox is still paying him. They've still got him under contract. They're basically paying him not to be on a news network. Too bad for them Twitter exists. Mr. Good Dude, can Superman outrun the Flash? I don't know. They'd probably just end up 69ing each other. That's what they're into. And this would be canonical, according to new Marvel and DC or whatever company owns these dumb franchises at this point. Next news story. Chris Christie kicks off 2024 campaign with sharp attacks on Trump. Of course, CNN using that terminology. What sharp attacks? I don't understand. We'll read through a little bit of this, though, because it's hilarious. Former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie kicked off his second presidential campaign on Tuesday with a lacerating indictment. I love these loaded words. It's a form of fallacy of former President Donald Trump, calling his ally turned rival a lonely, self-consumed mirror hog. Talking about consuming things and pigs in the context of criticizing your adversary when you are Chris Christie is probably the worst thing he could possibly have done. The linguistics of this is so fucking goddamn hilarious. I couldn't help but laugh when I read the article. I'm like, okay, Chris Christie, strategically, usually he's on the up and up, like when he took down Marco Rubio or something. He's not bad at debating. He's not bad at the strategy side of politics. It's his optics and his ideology that are off. That's his problem. What would possibly possess you? A mirror hog? Trust me, Christie, you don't want to use the term hog in a sentence when you're talking about one of your rivals, because when people think of that term and they're watching you, they're thinking of you. And that really is the way that the human mind works. Poor linguistic choice. At a town hall event in New Hampshire, Christie, who endorsed Trump after dropping out of the 2016 primary and then became a close advisor to the former president, briefly, by the way, ahead of the 2020 election, described his past support as an error. That's another major mistake. Don't admit fault. Do not apologize to people, Christie. If you want to be the big New Jersey mob boss style politician, that's also not the way to go about it. Trying to give him advice. Maybe he can rise to 2 points in the aggregate if he takes it. And urge Republicans to join him in rejecting the GOP frontrunner. Beware of the leader in this country who you have handed leadership to, who has never made a mistake, who has never done anything wrong, who, when something goes wrong, it's always someone else's fault, and who has never lost, Christie said of Trump. Okay, well, that's a vacuous pile of sloganeering bullshit. Nobody cares. And get this. If you think that I'm building you a cake right now, I'm about to give you the icing. Nearly 30 minutes after he began speaking. So you've got almost an entire half-hour litany of how Donald Trump is bad. It's literally all about him. Christie made his own declaration. I can't guarantee you success, but I can guarantee you that at the end of it, you will have no doubt in your mind who I am and what I stand for and whether I deserve it. That's why I came back to New Hampshire to tell all of you that I intend to seek the Republican nomination for President of the United States in 24. I can't guarantee that we'll win. Oh, no. What a Jeb move. No, there's no guarantee. Don't get your expectations up. By the way, I just talked about Trump for 30 minutes. He actually won a goddamn national election. Don't get your hopes up, but I'll try. I'll try really hard. You'll know that I'm honest. Fuck Chris Christie. That's the last thing you're known for. People right now are clamoring for decisive leadership more than anything else. This is why DeSantis has failed. DeSantis waffled around and made a bunch of mistakes that made him look indecisive and fickle. That really hurt him. He would have gotten a decent boost from just launching a campaign. He waited too long. He looked fickle about it and feckless. That was his problem. Trump doesn't have that issue. To his credit, whatever credit is due, Biden doesn't have that issue. Hell, RFK Jr. doesn't have that issue. But every other Republican other than maybe Nikki Haley and Ramaswamy joining the field has this issue. And that's really their problem. Larry Elder, he waited it out. Mike Pence, again, you're the former VP. Originally, you were polling close to double digits, and you waited and waited till you were below Nikki Haley. This is not going to go over well. Chris Christie made 3 major errors just in his campaign launch. It's literally, this is the worst campaign launch that we've seen. It was worse than Williamson. It was far worse than DeSantis. And I criticized DeSantis gleefully at the time when he made his mistakes. This is worse. Chris Christie will not be the nominee. There is no chance of it. There's no appetite, pun intended, for Chris Christie for dinner. It'd be a big dinner. Trust me. Cannibalism is frowned upon. So is gluttony. Wonder how many servings there'd be in there. How many calories? Probably in the many hundreds of thousands range. 2 dogs, Mike D. If the Flash and Superman 69'd each other, would it create a tornado? A Mr. Twister? I like that. Virgil Walker. Will the war in Ukraine end if Trump is elected, or will the USA simply get uninvolved? Well, that would end it. So, yeah, I would say the answer is probably yes. Although the idea that he would solve the problem in a single day, that's Trump being hyperbolic a la Trump. It wouldn't be solved immediately. But you would have negotiations. An attempt would be made. If it worked with North Korea, I think he can probably get it to work with the Russians. People are underestimating Trump's diplomatic capabilities if they think otherwise. Again, in the dawn of his presidency, Donald Trump's first goal diplomatically was trying to create camaraderie between Israel and Palestine, which would have been a monumental, groundbreaking, ever-loving success. He failed at that, which is why he immediately scheduled talks with Kim Jong-un. he decided to go for the silver. He couldn't get the gold because the Israeli and Palestinian authorities are just too goddamn stubborn and too warmongering. So he said, you know what, fuck it. I moved the embassy there and I call it a day and I focus on number 2, which is North Korea. And he had a good success there. You had a lot of rapprochement going on. It's too bad that the 2020 election was honked on. I'm still not sure if I'm allowed to say the more literal thing even on YouTube, which has rescinded that part of its TOS. But we'll be cautious. They can make new rules retroactive, and I don't want to have to go back through and delete a bunch of shit yet again. But he did a good job in North Korea, by and large. If he had been reelected or reselected by the tribunal of the trilaterals of the New World Order, probably right now peace would have broken out in North Korea, and John Bolton would have hanged himself. Mac Damon, did you hear about the 30 vanished Cleveland kids in 2 weeks? No Amber Alert, and runaways are usually found fast. Police say hot weather afforded kids running off. Cleveland is a small town. Why no alerts? Cleveland, a small town? I don't know about that, although his population has declined precipitously. I don't know. I haven't heard anything about that. If somebody knows about the missing Cleveland kids, you can DM me on Twitter with a news tip. I'll look into that. Deplorable Dave. Sticks, can you please do a garden video of the plants around Amsterdam? I would if I were anywhere near Amsterdam. It's a 2-hour drive from here. I am in Anschede on the other side, close to Germany, actually, and Hengelo and other such wonderful places. I do like this side of the Netherlands. I like Amsterdam in its own way. I think my favorite spot in the Netherlands so far, though, is Friesland. It's like Farmville. Sigilstone. Christie is weighing down the primaries. He's making a huge splash. He's rolling in and crushing his opponents. He's consuming the elections. He's really throwing his weight around. No sugarcoating it. What a litany. The worst thing is knowing that all of those one-liners have been used at one time or another. Scott McLaughlin, Christie and Pence are simply grifting. The only ones that aren't are Trump, DeSantis, Scott, and Larry Elder, and DeSantis isn't ready for prime time. I would say, yeah, it's a good way to summarize it. Sparky, the U.S. funds 100% of Ukrainian government salaries and pensions. Stop the money, stop the war. Yeah, when are taxpayers going to get some of that money that they pay into the system so generously to give to other nations? Next news story. BBC is asking a question here, so I'm going to answer it for them. This is from the UK, from Britainstand and the Bongland. Could ultra-processed foods be harmful for us? Yeah. By the way, I like how they've dreamed up a new term. This is Orwellian newspeak, which makes sense. It's in Britainstand. Ultra-processed foods. Literally what they mean by that is processed foods. The idea is that a little bit of processing is fine. It's more processing eventually becomes ultra-processed. Food enhancers, including monosodium glutamate, are found in ultra-processed foods, such as instant noodles, which, by the way, I don't know how people digest them. I can't digest, like, ramen noodles. The last couple of times I did eat them, like, as opposed to, like, when you're a kid, you can, I had a cast iron stomach. I kind of still do, but, age does happen to the best of us. I don't understand why anyone over 30 can digest ramen noodles, actually. There's nothing in them. It's just a string of carbs with a lot of salt and shit. And it's disgusting. I don't understand why even when they make, like, the homemade ramen noodles and they add a bunch of vegetables and stuff to it, it's still, processed crap. I mean, and then these same people sometimes have a problem with spaghetti. Oh my God, look at all the carbs. I like noodles. If it's in spaghetti or something, I make my own sauce, by the way. 20 years ago, no one had heard of the term ultra-processed foods. That's because it's bullshit. Or UPF. But about half the things we now eat in the UK are made that way. Half of all of the food. Here's why your great-grandparents were healthier, assuming they didn't die of a disease in infancy or had a genetic problem. The reason why all those old codgers lived to be 90, despite the fact that they fucking chain smoked and took opium and used cocaine tooth drops when they were little babies, is because they prepared their own food and they got a lot more exercise. And it's really as simple as that. Dietary science is pseudoscience. You should ignore it completely. Eat as little processed shit as possible. If it's going to be processed, like if it's like a canned food, okay. That doesn't necessarily mean that other than having a preservative or a dye in it, that it's been processed further. But ramen noodles, Jesus Christ, you couldn't get more processed. Like those little cup of noodle things. Okay, we've added a bunch of chemicals. We've added lecithin, I think, is added to them, and a little bit of herbs, but they're not really herbs. They're just chemicals that come from herbs. And then we dry it and we put it in styrofoam. And how healthy for you? Yeah, it's not good to eat these things. They're not natural. Your body evolved like your ancestors did for millions of years. The Anthropocene lineage evolved to eat certain things and do certain things and not to do others. This does not mean artificiality is always wrong. Of course, it's artificial for a person to take vitamins, which sometimes are useful depending on the vitamin, how soluble it is. Jury's still out on a lot of them. That's fine. It's perfectly fine as a supplement or something. Vitamin D supplements. You're in a cold climate and you don't want to eat 5 servings of fish every day, so you take a vitamin D pill or drops or something. That's fine. Generally speaking, though, you've evolved for certain types of food. Carbs are not high on that list. Basically, if you look at the origin of man, carbs are definitely something that they searched for. They would have loved finding a bunch of nice sweet grain, some nice starchy tubers. They would have enjoyed, because it's a good caloric source, but they didn't find much of it for millions of years. So their bodies are capable of digesting these things, but you're not supposed to have a lot of them. You're supposed to be having protein, in some cases, literally eating the bugs. Fish, aquatic wildlife, of course, was high on the menu. Certain vegetative matter, fruits definitely would be high up there. Meats, things like that. You're supposed to eat that sort of diet. It's not quite keto, but it's reasonably close to it. There would have been carbs on a regular basis. It's just it would have been much smaller amounts than the average person eats today. And it wasn't refined. It wasn't Wonder Bread. That's what you're supposed to be eating, generally speaking. Also, there's individualized dieting. But processed foods don't really have a place within any lexicon of dietary science anyway. The idea of processed food really vis-a-vis microwave dinners and everything canned and stuff is a relatively modern concept. It really doesn't come about till the end of World War II. The canning process was prohibitively expensive until the 20th century. The concept of the prepared meal sort of thing, that prepackaged in cardboard and later plastic, is from the 50s and the 60s. That's when it was popularized. It was, by the way, marketed as nutritious. Well, it only takes 3 minutes in your Nucatron microwave, and it's got full day's nutrition. It wasn't, but it was marketed that way. It was basically false advertising, and people said, well, it takes a lot less time. It keeps for a lot longer than having a bunch of vegetables and meat and cheese and shit lying around. And so they forsook the ways of old, which was, hey, I've got my meat rack. This is all smoked. It can hang here for several years. This cheese will survive longer than I will under proper conditions. It's fully waxed. 10 years from now, I'll crack it open maybe and eat it on my birthday. They left that behind in favor of inferior foodstuffs. That's basically why people die quicker. They have diabetes, for example. It's not just sedentary lifestyle. It's the fucking sugar that people drink. I drink energy drinks. I drink sugar-free. I'd rather put the chemicals in my body than excessive amounts of sugar. Probably shouldn't do that either, but, everyone has their vices, of course. Those people, they worked all day and they ate less, which led to malnutrition. That's another health problem they did have, but they were eating better food. It was freshly grown. A lot of people did home gardening. Home gardening was one of the most common things in civilized world until basically the last 30 or 40 years. No, I wonder why people are more obese now. I wonder why diabetes rates are skyrocketing. Yes, UK. The answer is simple. The answer is yes. Ultra-processed foods are harmful for you. You should not eat any of them. Even basically processed food should be as limited as possible. I'll buy a can of tomato paste or something if I'm making a sauce, if I need to. I'd rather just do it with my own fresh tomatoes. If I had my way, the tomatoes and the herbs and shit would come straight from the garden. Can't do that right now, but when we have more room, definitely. There's going to be a spaghetti garden out there. Maybe I'll grow my own fucking grains and make my own noodles too. It's not massively difficult, actually. Sparky, ramen noodles saved Japan from starvation after World War II. That's their claim to fame. They saved many U.S. college students from starvation too. Yeah, I feel sorry for people that have no choice in the monetary sense, but really, if you have the choice, don't eat them. Ashley, Gen Z and young millennials probably won't live to 60. Yeah, it's rather sad. Alex Dimon, very telling that a majority of chemicals and additives used in U.S. foods are banned in almost every other country. Eat clean and fresh. Yeah, the one saving grace is even the processed food here in Europe is more stringently regulated. Like, I know as a libertarian, I don't like the regulatory thing, but the food is better overall. It is healthier. People should make that decision on their own. I don't believe the government regulation should be required, but it does have that impact. Absolutely. As far as the UK, I'm not sure. Of course, they're not in the EU anymore. Next news story, Joel Davis talking about this. Australia will hold a referendum later this year on adding an Indigenous voice to our constitution. The government and mainstream media are telling us it's nothing to fear, but the narrative doesn't add up. And talking about the campaign, how it's growing less prevalent over time. It looks like it's going to be close to a 50-50 deal. By the way, Joel, that means that they will rig the vote, just so you know. So you need to work double hard to make sure that people do not pass this. The government is claiming that the voice will merely be an advisory body with no government powers, totally subjective to Parliament's legislative control. So why do they want to put it in the Constitution? The entire purpose of constitutions is limiting government power. New Zealand has a similar institution to the voice called the Waitangi Tribunal, which the Prime Minister endorsed as a model which Australia should emulate. It was also supposed to act merely as an advisory body, but over time has become far more. And I'll let you read the rest of that thread, link in the description if you want. The basic premise is this. If you alter a nation's constitution and you put a council, an advisory group, or anything in there, you can end up with court cases that expand their mandate. That's the basic premise here. It's been seen before, and New Zealand is an example of this in other countries. You end up with what is originally meant to be just we give advice to the government being ignored potentially, and then they throw a bitch fit about it, and they sue. And then a court says, well, this is in our constitution. You can't countermand them. You can't just ignore them. You have to take their advice. You need their consent in order to pass any law, potentially. You need their consent to pass this specific law. You need their consent to block this specific proposal. And so I agree with this. It's a bad idea. It sounds sort of like the idea indigenous voice. Okay, first of all, who gives a fuck about being indigenous? That's an antiquated term anyway. Fuck indigenousness. Giving them a voice is the basic premise of the linguistic terminology that's being used to market this proposal. When you get the family-friendly sounding inclusivity, give me a voice, human rights campaign, stuff like that, is it ever actually that's the reality, or is it all bullshit? Is it always that it's actually meant to deprive or abuse other people? Well, it's meant to deprive and abuse people. Patriot Act, for example. Real patriotic. We've got a million examples of this. So, yeah, the Australian people, if you're Australian, definitely vote no on that and get everyone else to do so. I know Australians can be quite activistic, but it's usually only under stress. So if they're trying to pass it sort of under the radar, a lot of people that otherwise would oppose it if they knew how bad it could be won't vote. So you run that risk. The swamp cleaner. If PV is suing O'Keefe, Fox will sue Tucker. They might try. It's less clear cut in that case. Sparky, sugar and other carbs are more drugs than food for most humans. Until modern times, food and medicine were almost, if not all the way, synonymous. Yeah, eating right is definitely beneficial. Sacrificial ramen. Shut up and take my money. I sent you the video and Twitter DM. You're pretty much my morning show, so keep on. I thank you very much for that good clankin'. Yeah, many more shows to come. I always apologize when I miss a stream. Sometimes you don't have a choice. The week after next, I think one of the days I might not stream. I'm not sure. I'll make sure to tell people beforehand. And then the final news story. This is very hard-hitting news. Well, I mean, it could be hard-hitting depending on how you're doing it. When and why did masturbation evolve in primates? A new study provides clues. The behavior may help males be fertile and disease-free, but data on females are lacking. Well, it's called a sex drive, people do have that. Yes, including women. I know that it's taboo to say this, but yes, women do have a sex drive. Unless there was someone who's really, really boring or they're really bad in bed or something. It happens. Men have a sex drive. Women have a sex drive. And yes, monkeys, believe it or not, those animals that beat off on one another fucking constantly, they have a sex drive too. This is making the claim, and I disagree with it, that the basic point of beating off is to refresh the sperm so that old sperm is not creating the next generation, which could cause birth defects or something. I would hazard a guess, though, that monkeys that typically don't live anywhere near as long as humans don't really suffer from that problem. in that sense. If you've got a population of animals that in theory can live to X age, but it only tends to live to half that age, the genetic reliability of their sperm will be high because there aren't very many older members. The older members are fucked up. They're not getting any pussy anyway, so it doesn't matter. Nobody cares. Same would be true of the female members of that species. I pronounce a much more prosaic answer to the so-called evolutionary problem of why masturbation exists. Why on earth would an individual within a species waste its time beating off as opposed to mating? Because you would think that would be genetically, as far as reproduction goes, it's more efficient. It's because those individual creatures are horny. They're not caring about it. A monkey doesn't understand the concept of efficiency very well. Try teaching it to any of them at any time, and you'll probably fail. I guess Coco the gorilla may have understood the basic premise. That's pretty much as far as you go. They're horny. Here's the thing. And by the way, my camera is getting fucked up here. That's a little bit better. It happens quite commonly. The fact is that they eventually discover that touching this certain part of their body feels good. And so they do it more. And they discover that they can orgasm and they keep doing it because they're monkeys. They don't give a shit about reproductive efficiency. And monkeys jerk off all day. That's half of what they do, jerking off and throwing shit at people. And then they eat a mango, they pass out, and then they do it all over again. There, I've answered your question. No, we don't need any evolutionary mystery as to why masturbation evolved. By the way, other animals lower than primates are also capable of doing that. It's observed in many species. I don't think insects do it. Not sure about like amphibians. I know it's happens in other mammals though. Dogs, play with themselves. Although it's harder when you don't have opposable thumbs, I suppose. So yeah, there's the Styx Hexenhammer official clank answer for why monkeys beat off is because they like beating off. It has absolutely nothing to do with the consideration over the genetic composition of their sperm. And I like how it also says, well, also, this doesn't answer the question. The premise of refreshing sperm doesn't answer the mystery of why females do it. Again, there's no mystery. It's because it feels good. People masturbate. So do monkeys and gorillas and orangutans and all of these other wonderful creatures. And they're constantly coming all over the place. That's just the reality of the world. President Irina Vladimirovna Putina just wanted to say this in regards to the Pride backlash. A major part of the backlash is also likely to be people tired of having the LGBT propaganda shoved down our throats. Some of it comes from people who are gay that want to be left alone. And they got equal rights, the right to marry, etc. And they said, okay, well, then we're done. And then a bunch of grifters took the pride flag up to make money. The Defamation League, Orange Cat Bad, bring back the real kitty co-host. The real kitty co-hosts are all over the place sleeping. Yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, again, I hate to use it's the current year meme, but it's kind of funny that it's 2023 and they're trying to figure out why monkeys would beat off. Could it be because it's pleasurable and relaxing and monkeys spend 20 hours of the day doing absolutely fucking nothing because they live up in the trees where the fruit is and stuff. They forage a little bit, they get a good meal, and then they nod off for a nap. Wow, it's a mystery to me. By the way, please send no more super chats. I'm going to go offline soon here after a couple more I read here. Swamp Donkey 69420. 95% of psychology is also pseudoscience, which is filled to the brim with foaming at the mouth leftists. Agreed, absolutely. Psychology is useless. And a follow-up, why is the entire Anglosphere gone crazy, especially with the anti-white stuff? Commie subversion. Well, keep it simple. Sigilstone 17. There were studies to find the purpose of the wangs. Had Harvard found it was for women's pleasure. Yale found it was for men's pleasure. University of Georgia found it kept your hand from slipping off. And the University of Alabama found that it was the purpose was to more effectively copulate with your relatives. I know, Alabama viewers. That's a low blow. Come on. There are plenty of jokes about Vermonters, too. The Patriot Cairo. When blacks say they're proud to be American, AOC tweets, I can't believe how many black white supremacists there are. Ashley, Mystery of the Human Fap, directed by Tarangel. Yeah, why on earth would monkeys play with themselves? Well, I mean, they can't always find a mate, and, you just ate your mango. You're ready for your nap. You want to relax beforehand. Well, it's as simple as that. Guns with guns. Alabama incest joke. How original. I know it's low-hanging fruit, But I'm a dad now, so I can make lame jokes and they're still funny. Nobody can criticize me for it. Sparky, ape study could have been because they needed a federal grant. Yeah, that's a possibility. It's like the mating cycle of the housefly or something like that, or shrimp on a treadmill. That's a famous one, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, I'm going to go offline. I will be live again tomorrow. I thank you to the almost 4,500 people who tuned in live, and who knows how many on Twitter. I can't see what you're saying because I still don't have a setup as sophisticated as Tucker Carlson has now. You know, I soon, maybe, I will be competing with him. That's probably not going to happen, but, you know, you can dream. That's about all. Peace out.